Now, while preparations are underway for the inauguration in 2 weeks' time, Nigeria's President-elect Bola Tinubu, his APC party and their supporters will be keenly conscious of the ongoing cases in the election tribunal challenging Mr. Tinubu's INEC-declared victory. And also that the US has today announced visa restrictions on select unnamed Nigerians for undermining the 2023 election. They'll also be aware that many Nigerians feel that the outgoing president, Muhammadu Buhari, who's also from the APC, has over the past 8 years presided over a country that's seen very weak economic growth, deepening insecurity, and a lack of innovative approaches to development, and has failed to tackle numerous problems such as unemployment, rising debt, and the electricity pinch. And now, on top of all that, you've got an election that many see as not being free and credible. But is it fair to blame only the APC, even though they've been in charge for the last 8 years? Or should it include the PDP, which presided over the affairs of this country for 16 years up till 2015, and which many see as laying the foundation for the culture of election rigging in this country? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the lawyer, leading member of the PDP and spokesman of the Atiku presidential campaign, Daniel Bwala. How nice to see you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let me start by asking you, first of all, your reaction to the announcement today by the US that it's imposing visa restrictions on select unnamed Nigerians for apparently undermining the 2023 election.
It is a good news. It goes a long way to tell us that the U.S. actually stays true to its values and to the ideals that binds countries, as a democratic society. I particularly took cognizance of the choice of words that Anthony Blinken used in announcing the visa restriction. And he said they are committed to deepening democracy and the rule of law. These are two things, democracy and the rule of law. And democracy is the government of the people, for the people, and by the people. It's all about the people, not about few individuals, which
Absolutely.
is what has happened. And then the rule of law is, the concept of the rule of law is entrenched in this doctrine that everybody is equal before the law, nobody is above the law, and the law is a set rule to which everybody abides by. It's not a law you set as you move, like the way the INEC chairman, he said this is the rule, and then got into the game midway in the match, he just changed the goalposts. And so this is good news to us. We have made further requests because oftentimes individuals and countries feel that visa restriction is not a big deal. Especially because they have alternatives to what would have ordinarily taken them to the U.S. But we have a deeper understanding of what that means. U.S. exercise what we call extraterritoriality for the most part. So it is not just being denied the access to the United States of America. Sometimes it sort of increased, enhanced security in other countries to which they are partners.
Well, that would be more effective, wouldn't it?
That's exactly what they do. So, for example, if ordinarily, as a private citizen or a government official, you travel to the UK and you have a seamless security checks while you go in, with visa restriction on you to enter the United States, unknown to you, there are enhanced security checks that you find in our countries to which the American people have a partnership. But it also opens the person up and exposes that person to deeper background check in terms of the assets you have outside of the shores of the country, your communications and who you're communicating with, who are your medical service providers, where do you go and whatever you do. So it is like the case of somebody who has been, placed under a watch list. That's what it means. But there is even a broader aspect. If a visa restriction is placed on me, by extension, my entire family is under surveillance, so to speak, because they have what they call the web. When they conduct investigation, they have a web where one linked to the other one linked to the other, and it is expanded. It will surprise you, and then with time we will get to know individuals that are involved in it.
Yes, I was going to say, does it make a difference?
Yeah.
That the names of the people have not been made public?
Yeah, it is actually the law of the United States that if a visa, because visa is a personal request, unless America is taking certain steps specifically against that individual. And I think Anthony Blinken made it clear, it is not a visa restriction, it is not a sanction against the government of Nigeria or against the people of Nigeria. It's against the perpetrators of this election fraud. Has that not gone again to establish what we have been talking about? That this election was marred with irregularity. This election was a Broadway show. This election is not something that in the eyes of the common man, we would all live and translate that story to our people. It's the worst election in the history of the Republic. Now, in 2019, there were visa restrictions, but never in terms of the magnitude as compared to this one. This is just the first step. So people don't take it that, okay, what does that mean? No, it's the first step. And this is how they progress. First, they place a visa restriction on you. Number two, they apply extraterritoriality in freezing your assets anywhere in the world. And number three, they place you under criminal surveillance.
But we've heard reports that suggest that the imposition of these visa restrictions is not limited to one party,
Right.
but is across the board.
Yes, correct.
So it could easily affect the PDP, your party
It could
as
affect
well.
PDP, it could affect Labour, it could affect anybody that is practically, not overtly, but covertly and very actively involved in the either election rigging, promotion of violence, or manipulation of the process. But it will interest you to know, and I can say that you can verify, much later it will come out. Majority of these individuals that come under this radar are government functionaries, people in positions of power that abuse the privileges and the position that they've had. It's not just ordinary individuals. So for example, governors are involved, cabinet members are involved, directors of certain agencies of government are involved, private individuals that act out as their agent in perpetrating this fraud are involved. These are the remote cause, and then you can expand as you move, from that.
But the PDP is involved, is it?
I said it could involve anybody.
Right.
It could involve
Yeah,
anybody.
you're saying it could.
It could,
Does
yeah.
it? Because you mentioned the other people
Right.
who you seem to have information
Right.
about that it's roped them in.
Right.
Do you have information whether anybody in your own party is involved?
I want to tell you, anybody can be involved if that person is actively involved in
you're saying
election
can
manipulation.
be. I'm asking you if any person is involved.
I don't work with the U.S. Embassy.
Well, yeah, but you just identified other people
But this is a fact
who
that
you said are
because-
government functionaries.
and you would see that.
So obviously you have that information.
I plead the fifth.
I like that. Well, your party, the PDP, have suggested that the last 8 years have been the worst of times for Nigerians
Right.
in terms of rising insecurity, deepening poverty, worsening unemployment, increasing debt, and now weakening processes of democracy.
Right.
After what many see as a flawed 2023 presidential election.
Right.
There's 2 weeks to go before President Buhari leaves office. What can he do now to shore up his legacy, or is it too late?
So, partially late, but there are some things he can do, especially in the area of entrenching or strengthening the confidence of the electoral body. You see, because right now there is election petition in court, and there are possible outcomes. One of which could be the ordering of a fresh election or runoff, whatever it is.
Well, he can't do it until the courts decide.
But the government has to be ready.
Yeah.
You understand? The government has to be ready so that when the court makes that decision and then they flung into action. The problem we have in Africa and in Nigeria is that sometimes either tacitly or deliberately we choose not to be prepared. Because I remember the INEC chairman said that they were prepared even for a possible runoff. Now, ordinarily, the president, as I'm telling you, if he wants to leave a legacy, because with this election, he has to a large extent marred the legacy of electoral legacy. Now, in fact, he has invalidated the even signing of the Electoral Act, because the whole essence of the Electoral Act itself was abused in this election. So he can redeem that by first sacking the INEC chairman. Why did I say that? Why am I saying that? Because if the court orders a runoff or a fresh election, not a single citizen in Nigeria will have confidence that this chairman will conduct a free and fair election. So, and by the time the president becomes the president, whoever he appoints as the INEC chairman, assuming he removes this man, it will take a great deal of supernatural intervention for people to believe that he will not influence that person. But the President Buhari can at this point ask the INEC chairman to go reappoint an unbiased person as the chairman of INEC. then that person will begin the process of preparing for a possible runoff. Because there are other issues around disqualification, which of course the effect will be that the person who came second will be declared as the winner and the INEC will be asked to issue. These are issues, these are possibilities. But the government must never be sleeping, knowing that the case is in court and there are possible outcomes that will come. This is one way by which it will redeem the already, in my opinion,
right. Well,
image.
Some have suggested that since the INEC chairman was the one who presided over the election, he should see the court challenges through before he leaves office.
So INEC is an institution. INEC was sued as a legal personality, right? It is not just Professor Mahmoud. He has not been in court. And he has been able to, according, I don't know if he's able to get that, to raise 4 billion to defend the case. I assume that if you have conducted, in your view, free and fair election, you probably should have legal department going to court, because what vested interest do you have other than to say, I conducted a free and fair election? But when you see somebody saying, I need 4 billion to defend that, it goes a long way. But that's one. Number two, in my view, and quite frankly, is that the election can, the petition can successfully be prosecuted with or without INEC chairman as a person, because INEC as an institution is the one that conducted the election. In fact, if you look at the Electoral, like for example, section 60 or 64, where it talks about power of INEC, the commission, that's what the law says, to review the result. This is a salient provision in that Electoral Act to which this man refuses and turned blind eyes to it when he was asked. And in the other elections following, like in the governorship elections and the National Assembly elections, where complaints were made about certain polling units and places, he exercised the same power he refused to exercise in the presidential. You saw what happened in Adamawa. You saw what happened in other places. He reviewed the complaint and ordered another election. It is the same law that applies to the presidential. When he was asked during the process, why don't you consider this and then address the issue? He said, I will just announce the result and then I have 7 days. Have we seen the 7 days till today? So nobody, I don't even think that APC will even have confidence in him. That's the extent to which it has gone. So to me, the president, Buhari, has to be the one to appoint because he's leaving. The assumption is that he does not have a vested interest. So President Buhari should appoint a new INEC chairman and rejig the commissioners if you want to instill the confidence that the Nigerian people will have, assuming that there is an order of court consequently for a runoff. But without that, when the order is made, the same people, doing one thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of INEC.
And beyond the INEC chairman himself, I mean, is there any role that you see other institutions of state playing whilst these election challenges and litigation is going on in a situation where, as we said, INEC creates the mess and the courts clean up that mess?
Right. So when the court is presented with the opportunity, as has always been, to not only provide check and balance to the other institutions of the state, but correct the polity. And over the years, we have seen how these courts in Nigeria have, in the interest of public safety, public peace, and national security, corrected so many anomalies. Now, it is believed that the case before them is not just a case between political parties. It is a clarion call on the judiciary to correct. And like I've always said, the facts are clear, the law is clear. We don't discuss the strength and weakness of them. The court will decide based on how you argue your matter. But there are certain things that are not in denial. There are facts in law, we said, facts that are agreed by all parties. In fact, after our last proceedings, the court said the parties should just go and agree on those things that are not contentious. So for example, if you say Tinubu said we found international passport belonging to Tinubu, of Guinea, nobody's disputing that. If you say Tinubu did not score 25% in the FCT, the APC did not dispute that. If you said on that day, INEC did not upload real time the result in the IREF, nobody disputing that. People are trying to give excuse as to why they did what they did.
Yes, they're giving reasons.
They are giving reasons.
Right.
So now the court will look at these facts and listen to the argument of counsel and then decide. But whichever way it goes, I have said it and it bears repeating. We have confidence in the judicial system in Nigeria. Over the years, they have played their part. There are one or two in the individual in the judiciary that have, like bad eggs. They create problem for the system. A greater number of the judicial officers in Nigeria, under the most difficult situation, have stood up to the creed that found the integrity of that institution. We are saying destiny is calling on you again. Here is what we have said, that interference with the very essence of the rule of law is that there is non-interference by not just the federal government but the institutions of the federal government. So for example, when the court sits to determine a matter, there are institutions of government that preserve the state. You can find law enforcement, you find INEC. The other day I was in your show, I talked about the Broadcasting Commission and the tacit intimidation that they bring. They are finding weak journalists who are money journalists and trying to see if they can compromise them. But Nigeria has had, and we still have, credible journalists. They are you can't impeach their character. And so these individuals and the judges and the Nigerian public, we are saying, don't use the institution of the state to harass people. We from the opposition too, don't use the institution of state and be monitoring. Well, I'm snoring, you are calculating how many snores I make simply because I'm from the opposition. And one funny thing, Mr. Charles, I will tell you this, is an irony which that we haven't learned in Africa. Today, the president of Nigeria sits as the commander-in-chief. He will leave this government. Few months after that, he will be a private citizen in court defending a case against him. He will need to now rely on the integrity of the judiciary. He would hope at that time that the government does not use anything against him. This cyclical effect we still have not been able to learn. Even directors and heads of agencies of government, they use power today to the fullest, either for good or for bad. Tomorrow the same power is used by their successors against them, and they come to us, the lawyers, to defend them. And they go to the same institutions like the judiciary and seek for redress. We must get it right. And for us as People's Democratic Party, like I said, not just excited about the steps that the American government is taking, and we believe that their counterpart will follow in ensuring there is no interference. We also say we don't have confidence in this INEC chairman, his ability to conduct a runoff should there be an order of court for a runoff.
Right.
And the only person that can do the right now is the president of Nigeria.
Well, you actually made that point fairly stridently, and one is sometimes reminded of the often quoted remark of the former leader of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, who said that it doesn't matter how many people vote, only who counts the votes. That kind of supports the point you're making. Is it your sense that Nigeria still has not moved beyond that stage, despite the introduction? And that's one of the reasons you're calling for the removal of the chairman.
I believe we have not moved. You could look at it from 1999 when Yar'Adua, when he came on board, what he did was to admit to the world that the process that brought him to power was a flawed process. He committed to reforms. When Buhari took over in 2015, one of his key objectives was to reform, because he said he was a victim, according to him, a victim of electoral malpractice. He said he was always in court until God sent technology. I'm quoting him, his word verbatim, that he prayed to God and God sent technology, and that's how he won. But in his own time, the technology was attacked and he couldn't protect it. You see, because it is not enough for the president to say, I provide security, I provide the money for INEC. If you need to know the powers of the commander-in-chief, is that he sits in a position only below God as far as the nation is concerned. The things you don't know about Nigeria, he knows it. He has enormous resources, he has capacity, he has access and privilege. And we were shouting in this process of the election. Immediately after the election, the president changed his posture from that of somebody who wants to see a free and fair election to even making comments that seem to give the impression that he is prejudicing the court. When you start saying the victory of somebody is certain, I can't wait to leave, I am leaving, I'm packing my things, you will pack one day. You don't even have to say it.
Some will say, though, and some have said, that all this is the legacy of the PDP over the 16 years that it ruled Nigeria, and chief amongst those was election rigging. What is your response?
So this is
because every single election since 1999, right up to 2015, was suspect.
So, so this is what we call the whataboutism. The Americans call the whataboutism. Whenever you tell APC something is not right with you, they say, but you laid the foundation, oh, but you did it. You see, when they started in the first 2 years, 3 years, everybody said, let's give them some time to do that. I mean, how many years do you have to be in the university to be a medical doctor, engineer? There is no course in this country at the university that exceeds 8 years to become a professional. They have had ample time to correct whatever they thought was a problem.
Yeah, but the culture is what we're talking about. The PDP
Right.
is part of the political culture in Nigeria.
The point is, it's still not an excuse. How many years did it take Japan to reform the culture of the Japanese people? The China, culture of the Chinese people.
But the argument has always been that if you won the election, you wouldn't be making these points you're making now. You wouldn't be critical of the process as you have been.
Because if they announce it as transparent as it is, we won. That's the point. Now look at it this way. PDP over the years admitted to the fact that they made so many mistakes.
Right.
I remember Prince Secondus one time when he became chairman, he took a campaign around Nigeria to tell Nigerians we are sorry. And then they began to take steps. Has APC ever said we are sorry? This is a party that wants to make lies a statecraft. Lies, a statecraft. The president-select was traveling, they announced that he was traveling on an official visit where he will engage with investors, where he will do this, he will do that. How many days has he been away? We haven't seen a picture of him alerting from the plane or investor receiving him.
And we raised that point on this program.
Right.
We had an APC spokesman.
And what did they say?
Well, we put them to task, and they said, oh yeah, we will release once the schedule is set up and all the rest of it. But,
Let me tell you,
you are raising some important points, I have to admit, but we haven't got that much time left, so don't start moaning about you're not being given enough time, because you certainly have had good time.
Right.
Let's turn to the inauguration. Just 2 weeks away now, but it is going to take place.
Certainly.
Do you see any hope at all on the horizon? Any cause for optimism that a new leadership is coming in and perhaps should be given a chance to remake Nigeria?
So this is up to Tinubu, quite frankly, when at least he will become a president on May 29, and he will have about 6 or 7 months before he will be sacked, and then we will come and take over the power. I'm a realist, and I'm also a Democrat. I don't believe in ambushment. There is nothing constitutionally that suggests, as we're moving, that Tinubu cannot, be sworn in as the president unless there is an order of court or this court that sits that has been asked to give the privilege for them to argue Section 134. So if the Court of Appeal gives that opportunity and holds the view that 25% in the FCT is sacrosanct, then there won't be swearing in. Because once you do that, you're going to then cancel the election without having to go into the details of the petition. But we don't know whether that is going to happen. So if it does not happen, and there is no any order to stop that, then Tinubu will have to be sworn in consistent with democratic ideals. But as per what he makes out of the leadership is up to him. He can decide to come into government with a reconciliatory spirit and make some progress. Or he can decide to come to government with the hope of suppressing those who will continue to insist. Because you see, that's the bad thing about our law. Ordinarily, petitions ought to have been determined before 29. Now the law does not permit that. So after he becomes a president, it does not take away the fact that we have a petition in court and we're going to maintain the same position we maintain for the time it will be till the court decides.
Okay, we've got about a minute or so, sadly.
Right.
What will you be doing on Inauguration Day now that the die appears to have been irrevocably cast and the swearing in will go ahead? I mean, how deflated will you be?
Well, to me, it's not a case of being deflated or how I feel. On the day of inauguration, if Tinubu succeeds and he's inaugurated, after that day, I will congratulate him as the president, because that is law, right? But I will maintain the position where opposition and that election was stolen, right? On the day of election, on the day of inauguration, what will I be doing? I'll be praying for Nigeria, because Nigeria is in deep shit. Nigeria is in deep shit.
Well,
and there is no way.
You shouldn't use that word.
Oh,
that
really?
You just use. That's what we call NTBB, not to be broadcast.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So on that note, I want to thank
so
you very
sorry.
much indeed. Although all the other points you made were, I mean, some would say that they were above board, but that particular word is not to be used.
Okay, Nigeria is in a deep mess.
Yeah, that's a better
okay.
word. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Daniel Bwala is a lawyer, leading member of the PDP and spokesman of the Atiku presidential campaign. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you as always.